some of your old hangouts, places that you don't go to anymore. Your spirit says, no, don't do it, but you go anyway. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but 2 or 3 months later, you find yourself in the same place you were before you got saved. Destitute and living below your privilege. That's where the disciples were in this text. They were destitute and living below their calling. When Jesus called them 3 years earlier, they were fishing and their nets were empty. And here they are 3 years later, after having been with the Christ and crisscrossed the Canaan with the Christ, finding them fishing with nothing in their nets. I don't know who I'm preaching to this morning, but whoever you are, when God has a calling on your life, I just need to tell you, you can run, but you can't hide. The Bible says, Jesus spoke to them from the seashore. Friends, have you any needs? Now on the surface, this appears to be a question around physical food, but it is a much deeper philosophical and theological question. Because what he really asked them was, after doing what you wanted to do, and after doing what everybody else was doing, what do you have to show? Now when you look at the life of Peter, we see 3 separate and distinctly different Peters. Peter before his encounter with Jesus, Peter with Jesus, and now we're looking at another Peter. Peter after encountering Jesus. The resurrection has occurred. Peter is out of God's will, and he turns up where he was when Jesus first encountered him, fishing with nothing. But look at it. Look at our God. Look at how our God is, and how forgiving and long-suffering our God is. It's right there in verses 5 and 6. Do you have anything to eat? Cast your nets on the right side, and you will find some. Great God Almighty, church. This is a personal and in-your-face question and requires an answer from everybody. After years of walking with Jesus and professing to be healed, after years of coming to church and Sunday school and Bible study, are you in the same place you were when you first encountered him? Now don't look at me all funny like the cat that ate the canary, because the question is a legitimate question and it deserves an answer. And if your answer is yes, then you need to do what Jesus said, and that is do something different. If you make your assessment, your personal assessment, and find that you have an empty net, maybe you're fishing on the wrong side. I told you that the question was about more than just physical food. After the resurrection and their encounter with Jesus in the upper room, the disciples were disobedient and had gone their own way in their own strength. But the Bible says this time they did something different. They were obedient. It's right there in the book. It's in the B part of verse 6. It says, cast your nets on the right side of the boat. So they did, and there were so many fish that they couldn't get them all in the boat. The text said they couldn't get all the fish in the boat and that the net had to be dragged onto shore. I submit to you this morning that some churches may be empty because they're fishing on the wrong side. Oh, help me preach up in here because they don't like this kind of preaching. Now, there is a struggle on the journey of kingdom building, and it doesn't have to be. The struggle or the lack thereof is tied to our obedience. It's tied to a comfort zone and an unwillingness to change. Look at it now. The disciples were obedient and stopped doing it the way that they'd always done it. They stopped doing what was failing in the first place and cast their nets on the other side. And look at them in verse 12. Look at what happens in verse 12 when it is that they are obedient. Sitting at a marvelous feast with Jesus. And after they had eaten their fill, Jesus asked them a question. Do you love me? This is interesting because there are other disciples present at the feast. But he directs the question to Peter. Why would he direct the question to Peter? James and John are there. Thomas and Bartholomew were there. There were others there, but he asked Peter. And I wanted to know, so I went to the Lord because we tight like that. And I asked him, I said, Lord, why did you direct the question to Peter only? And he said, I asked Peter because Peter had given reason to doubt whether he really loved me or not. After all, Peter had denied me not once but 3 times. I told him to wait for me in Jerusalem. Instead, he went fishing. So Jesus directs a series of legitimate questions to Peter. Do you love me, or do you just admire me? Do you love me, or are you just hanging around for the miracles, for the fishing loaves? Do you love me, or were you using me to look good to other folk? Were you using me to build your resume? It was a legitimate question because Jesus was about to turn over the shepherding of the sheep to Peter and the other disciples. So this text is the reason why I interview with each and every officer in this church. Because as officers, you are charged with being an example and leading God's people. As an officer, you need to be positive and not negative. Because you have to feed God's sheep. I'll get back to that. No doubt. In this text, the fish that have been caught were symbolic of what was happening or what was going to happen to this new thing called the church. The church was about to grow with leaps and bounds and couldn't be turned over to just anybody. So Jesus asked the question, do you love me more than you love James and John and the other disciples? So, and let me put that in more contemporary terms because y'all not helping me. Do you love me more than you love your friends? Will you make the right decision when it goes against what they think or how they feel? Do you love me more than you love horses and chariots and palaces and riches? I guess I need to put that in more contemporary terms too. Do you love me more than houses and cars and clothes and pocketbooks and pocket change? Do you love me more than prestige and position and the way that you're perceived by others? Touch somebody and say, do you love it? Do you